Welcome to Retirement Revealed. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to turn your retirement savings into retirement income. Today, we're talking with Paul Kingsman about getting rid of distractions. Paul is an author and a speaker, and the only person who has ever let me wear his Olympic medal. If you want to get more focus, more important things done, you're going to love my conversation with Paul Kingsman. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jeremy. I've been looking forward to talking with you today.
You got it. And I dropped that nugget about the Olympic medal. So I'm assuming we're just going to have to start there. Tell us about yourself, your background. How did you come across an Olympic medal? I don't think you bought it.
No, I didn't buy it, and I'm glad you tried on the Olympic medal. I had the swimsuit there, but no one was actually opting to wear that. I started swimming when I was 8, and had a chance to was playing cricket and learned very quickly that cricket can be a very boring game. Right next to the cricket pitch was a swimming pool. And so when I was 8, my parents took me there and I jumped in the water. I told the guy standing on the side, who would then go on to be my coach for the next 15 years, that of course I could swim a lap pretty easily. I got to halfway and I stood up and was out of breath, and he decided that he'd take me anyway. And that started a 15-year time span together, incorporating 2 Olympic Games and 3 Commonwealth Games. I set lofty goals when I was very young. I was inspired when I watched the 1976 Montreal Olympics. I just started. I hadn't been swimming too long at that point. And I just remember vividly seeing what the athletes looked like when they were on that podium. And so for me, that was it. And so I set a goal to go to the Olympics and win a medal when I was very young. I went to the 1984 Olympics when I was 17, a young, dumb teenager, but learned a load. So by the time 1988 rolled around, I was 21 and I swam on the 200 meters backstroke and won an Olympic medal by 4/100ths of a second. So I definitely appreciate time and how quickly little pieces of time can change lives.
Yeah, I love you wrote a book focused towards financial advisors. We'll talk about that a little bit. And of course, most people listening are not a financial advisor. They're going to get a ton out of what we talk about because it's all about distractions, and who doesn't have distractions?
Yeah.
But what you wrote in your kind of the bio intro for the book, it says Paul knows the importance of keeping focus in life split seconds firsthand. He trained for 13 years to swim a 2-minute backstroke and won the medal by only 4/100ths of a second. So you definitely right on that. Well, look at that focus there. I imagine there's a lot of distractions that you avoided to get to the point to where you could have a 2-minute backstroke race at the Olympics.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Jeremy. The distractions at the actual event I saw again when I was 17 and a little immature for the circumstances, but I learned. And then we set down a plan after 1984 for 4 years. My coach and I, we took each year apart and said, okay, this is where we want to be at the end of each year up until 1988. And so, yes, one of the key things to do to succeed, especially in competitive sport, or frankly, any endeavor we deem appropriate to pursue in life, you're going to get bombarded with distractions, especially today with how accessible we are and how distractions are proliferating across any field or any venue that we are trying to watch, see, listen to. And so you've got to really know exactly where you're heading. You've got to know the ultimate desired outcome that you want. And I think have that very clearly set in your mind so that you can see what distractions look like. I think this is part of our challenge in all facets of life, is not having a very clearly defined, at least mental picture, ideally having that picture written down that we want to attain. And therefore, as soon as we know what that looks like, we know the things that can interrupt that. The trick isn't so much getting rid of the obvious distractions. It's the subtle distractions that are good, but not necessary. And they're the tough ones. And don't hear me say that I've got this dialed in. It's a day by day battle, I think, for us all.
Yeah, and so many people view this thinking, well, this is just do more work, get more done. When I'm approaching retirement, I, I I don't have to bother with that kind of stuff anymore. But you're talking about gain control, work smarter, enjoy success sooner, which of course is kind of business and accomplishment focused. But who doesn't want to control their time and whatever they're doing with a lot of people feel like retirement's just the small remainder of time.
Right.
Who wouldn't want to be smarter with the uses of those time and enjoy it more?
Right.
So you gave us some tips. You've got a bunch of tips on your website. We'll link to that as well too.
Sure.
But I picked out my five favorite that I felt were most appropriate. And one of
Sure.
them was that if you don't prioritize your time, other people will. And of course, you just shared how you had created a year by year schedule of how you will prioritize your time. But can you share with me a story that I've heard you speak before, and you
Mm.
shared a story about how really by prioritizing your time when it came to sleep, and how your mother kind of ran interference a lot of times to help that keep that as a priority.
Yes, yeah, my parents, I was blessed, I still am blessed with hugely supportive parents. And so they really were part of my team, during all of my swimming, financed the whole deal, which was very helpful.
Yeah.
But in 1988, yeah, when I was training solidly for the Olympics, I came home from a scholarship that I had at UC Berkeley. Finished my studies early, took my exams. We swam NC2As. I came back to New Zealand. And at that stage, we were the only Kingsmen living in New Zealand. And New Zealand's not a big country. And so I was very easy to find. I was very accessible. And so I had a lot of good friends in the media. But it was easy to find me in the phone book and easy for people to call me anytime they wanted to. And I'd set a criteria. My coach and I had been very structured about what we wanted, what I needed to be doing to rest and recover. And so one of the most important parts of training, with the intensity that you go through, I set my goal to be in bed by 8:30 every night. And so that's what I wanted to hold fast to, because I knew in the morning I was getting up to do this all over again. So your body needs rest to recover. And so the reporters, for the most part, knew the rules. And like I said, I got a lot of good friends in the media. And if they called me at 8:10, we could talk for 20 minutes. Oftentimes they would call me at 8:40, and they would get mum. And she was very polite but very clear. And as I've said to people, she held a double black belt in gatekeeping, where you just weren't getting through her. And she knew how tired I was, and she knew she was running defense for me. And so she knew the rules were, after 8:30, she just would take messages, or tell people to call me back the next day. But it can be tempting, to hear that phone ring and think, I know that guy, he's a neat guy. I know they're looking for a story for tomorrow morning's news. I'll get out of bed. It'll just take 10 minutes. But then you get out of bed at 8:40 and you realize, you don't get back to bed till 9:15. You're hyped up because you've been talking about the Olympics and what they're thinking you're aiming to do. And it totally defeats you setting that line in the sand, that standard, to say, regardless of how anybody else thinks about going to bed at 8:30 when they're 21 years old, this is my standard. And this is the criteria that I've set for myself. And this is my threshold. And so it's super important to take personal pride in setting those standards that are important for you personally. Others might not be able to understand them, or think, hey, just this once you'll fold on them. But you deepen that conviction for what you're doing. And so it just makes it easier to be thinking professionally, every day.
Yeah, and when you are prioritizing your time, you also mentioned how decide what activities are most important. So obviously, sleep's an important activity for training for anybody. But just thinking
Yeah.
of retirement, I hear from people all the time that I thought I was busy before I retired, but oh my goodness, the instant my schedule became open, all of a sudden it just got filled so quickly. Other
Right.
people just kind of prioritized their time for you, or you just thought, well, I can do everything because I have all this time in the world. But there's still
Yeah.
things that you feel are most important, that are a priority to you. And
Yep.
just this new idea, or newish idea, of time blocking
Mm,
makes a lot of sense. If you're working, just set aside the 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is, on the one particular activity. Just even retirement,
yeah.
go ahead and do the same thing. If the 2 hours of hiking is the most important thing, well, there you go. Turn off the phone and do the
Yeah.
2 hours of hiking.
Yeah.
uh,
And that's a great point you raised, Jeremy, because when I was working as an advisor, we often couched retirement. We didn't so much, we did refer to it sometimes as work optional, but we couched it more around choices. For a couple of reasons. One was to have people realize, hey, there's a consequence for a financial decision they're making now before they're retired, and therefore will have implications, positive or negative, down the track. But also to realize that we have choices, and when people are saying, hey, answer my call or answer my email, you're working to their schedule. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we want to be kind, we want to be giving and what have you. But there also comes a point where you've got to prioritize, your marriage, your children, your health. And so, especially in retirement, where a lot of people think, well, all you're doing is sitting around all day. It's just like, no, you've still got a wonderful stage of life to be using that time specifically, and whether it even be resting. A lot of people think, well, resting is just being lazy. It's recovery time to, as you pointed out, to go on that hike, to go to the beach, to have the energy for quality time with grandchildren, things like that.
Yeah, and you mentioned resting. You said rest, recover, repeat.
Right.
Athletes need to rest, they need to recover, but especially this repeat idea. I was talking with somebody, a friend of mine, and he kind of said, "What's your like one goal for the year?" And I said, "Well, I'm basically just doing more of the same thing." I said, "Wait a second, actually, let me rephrase this. I'm doing the same thing more often." Right? There's
Right.
a few things that are working well in the business, and I'm just trying to do more of those things
Right.
on there. It's a repeating thing. I
That's
imagine.
right.
Uh, I don't know if they call them repeats. Do they call them repeats in the swimming world? They do in like the running
Yeah. Yeah.
world.
Repeats.
Okay,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
you've done a lot of repeats in your
Yep.
lifetime, and
Yep.
you can't just do swim 50 meters once. It's the
No,
repeat, repeat, repeat on
that's
that,
right.
and you can't,
Yeah.
of course, do that if you didn't rest and recover. So whatever that is, whatever that is making your life good for retirement, you
Yeah.
probably want to do more of that. If it's
That's right.
travel, if it's golf, it's spend time with the grandkids. And if you haven't
Mm.
gone through and prioritized, if you don't have the rest and recovery, you probably can't repeat that and do more and more of that.
That's right. And our culture, so much of our culture, Jeremy, moves so fast that we tend to think that doing something repetitively is boring.
Hmm.
But it's actually not. It brings security. It brings mastery. If it's something like
Yeah.
golf, I'd also say even in relationships, it helps with mastery. Where there's my wife and I have a date time. We've dated since we're married for 32 years, and we intend to keep that even when we head into that retirement phase. We know on Thursdays at 4:30, that's our time. And so I'm a huge fan of repetition
Hmm.
and enjoying that. It doesn't get boring when you look for mastery in it, regardless of what it is, and that may even be in a daily routine. I enjoy getting up early in the morning. That's when I have my quiet time, my Bible study time. I'm up at 4:15 each morning. People say, "Well, you've finished swimming. Why would you do that?" It's just like I see the joy in it. It's the quietest time of the day, and
Yeah.
no one's calling. I can just take the time to get the day planned, do the reading that I want to do, and get ready for the day unhindered from anyone. And it's a part of my routine. As soon as I miss that time, the day's uphill from there. So
Hmm.
no, I'm a huge advocate for routines and following structure.
Yeah, and those routines, you want to make sure they're healthy routines, because you could get
Yeah,
into, you kind of think of a routine's maybe a healthy routine and bad habits, right? If you don't
right.
create your own healthy routine, you could fall into whatever that bad habit, and then that becomes the repetitive thing,
That's right.
whatever it might be. which falls into another category I saw you mention, is that choose to do what matters most right now. So even
Right.
good things done at the right time are distracting you. So I imagine if you fell asleep at 6 a.m. in the middle of your repeat workout, that's a good thing at the wrong time, right? If
That's
you
right.
got up and swam at 1 a.m. when you should have been sleeping, that was a good thing at the wrong time.
That's
So
right.
that's great. You're saying choose to do what matters most right now. And Thursdays at 4:30, what matters most right then is going on a date with your wife.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And it's understanding and taking pride in evaluating those priorities.
Hmm.
It doesn't necessarily mean that just because you're choosing not to do them, they're bad ideas, but they've just got to be done at the right time in their place. And so yeah, to hold to that and to take pride in doing that, because it's a struggle where I'm trying to think of the saying, good is the enemy of the great. Michael Hyatt used to say that, good is the enemy of the great, and we can always settle for good stuff instead of really pursuing things done excellently, or that excellent approach to maximizing that time block that we've allocated, or to maximizing that time with friends, or that time with family. And so I really was blessed to be surrounded by people who were advocates for doing things excellently. And there's a big difference between excellence and perfection. I'm not talking about perfection, but doing things excellently, even as we get older. I would say, especially as we get older, um, people are craving to see excellence in our culture. And when we think about retirement, when we think about choices, when we think about people aging up, there's so much that they have to offer, as far as letting people see these are the standards we've set. And this is why at 65, at 70, at 75, we're still in love with each other. And if everybody says, well, that's so sweet, it takes work. It takes diligent effort. I'm getting very careful about using the word work as well, because it has many negative connotations. I like
Sure.
the term diligent effort. And so again, we were so blessed in the church we went to in New Zealand. It was very important for us to go to a church with older retired couples and have our son see, hey, this is what it looks like when an 85-year-old wife loses a spouse. This is
Hmm.
what it looks like seeing an 87-year-old couple still in love. And look at the longevity here and where the value set is. So yes, I think there's people transitioning to that stage of life just have so much to offer.
Yeah, and part of it is that they've understand what's most important, where it seems like they've gotten over the thought that I can just do everything. One suggestion you make for getting rid of distractions is just understanding that multitasking is a myth. Uh,
Right.
it's it's interesting. My wife often asks me. She was asking me something just recently about we got a new puppy. What happens with this dog training? I've never trained a dog in my life. I've never owned a dog in my life. I said I don't know, and I'm not going to find out because I've got other things I can add value to. But
Right.
that's something that I think a lot of people go into. That okay, I'm going to learn a little about this. I'm a little bit about that. I'm going to do a little bit of this. I'm going to do a little bit of that. Like just focus on once you've done that prioritization, right? You've got 3, 4, 5 things, maybe 3, 4, 5 people that are most
Right.
important in your life, and to think
Yep.
that you can maybe spread yourself between all of them at one time
That's right.
is just a myth,
Yeah.
and it's not even just priority. It's saying you've got multiple things that you could do. Just pick the one and be
That's
really
right.
good at it. Yeah.
Yeah. And go deep. Go deep with it. I was just reading some of Warren Buffett's his approach, and we was saying, write out a list of 30 things that you want to do, pick the top 5, and the thinking is, and then you've got a second list with the remaining 25, and his perspective is, and then throw that last 25 out the window.
Hmm.
Focus on those 5 things, and one at a time. You're right about multitasking. There's a book called The One Thing, which I'm a huge advocate for.
Yes.
And it talks about the fact that we see computers do multiple operations, and it seems like they do them at once. But in fact, they do them, the computer does it so quickly, it appears like that, but it's still doing one task at a time.
Mm-hmm.
We're simply not made to do multiple tasks at multiple times. Now, this is one of the things I enjoy. I do a lot of speaking to different church groups, pointing out that everything was created in 6 days. And if there was anyone who could do everything at once, it was God. And even then, it's like no, I'll take 6 days and a seventh day to rest.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, take the cue here, people. And so, yeah, be fully present. And when my wife and I go out for a walk, typically we're walking at 4:30 on that Thursday, phones off. We don't talk shop. We don't talk business. We just talk about what each of us is doing in fitness or health stuff or those kinds of things. But be fully engaged at that particular time, and it becomes rich. And then, to your point you made, you yearn for it in other instances with other people, and that next person, you want to go deeper with them.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned the idea of putting the phone off, focusing on your wife at that point in time, because you're trying to become distraction proof. You're trying to get rid
Yeah.
of distractions. And in the list I was looking that you put together in your article, one thing that it seemed a little bit maybe outside of the thought of distractions, but I want to bring it in here because I think as you explain it, you're gonna really bring it home for why this next one is going to make the most sense. It's the fifth thing that I'm going to leave us with on how to become distraction proof. Before I get there, I'm just curious. I pulled up your Olympic results because I think the way I phrased the question might change. So you swam in the '88 Olympics. Did you run? Did you swim the 100 meters before the 200 meters? Or what
No,
was what?
the 100 was after the 200.
Okay, interesting. All right,
Yeah.
but I'm going to phrase my question differently. I was curious how that might have worked out. But your final idea of here's how you get rid of distractions is you learn from your setbacks and you keep
Yeah.
moving forward because
Yeah.
you swam in the '84 Olympics the 200 meters backstrokes
Yes.
and you got 20th,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then 4 years later you got the bronze medal.
Yeah.
I imagine when you finished the 200 meters backstroke 4 years earlier, you perhaps felt that was a setback, as if you could maybe do better. Tell me
Yeah.
about how you felt there and how you moved forward.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right, Jeremy, because remembering that in 1984 we had the boycott. So the Eastern Bloc countries were away. So if ever there was a chance to perform well and a better chance to get a medal, it was, it's when half the world isn't there. I didn't realize at the time that I actually had mono. I was diagnosed with that a month later, and they said, you've actually had this for the last 5 months. Which explained a lot of things. But yeah, at the time it was a huge disappointment because, as I said, half the world wasn't there, and we knew that even as a 17-year-old in '84, my main shot was going to be in '88, and here I am, like I'm just in the top 20 in the world, and it took some mental regrouping. Again, this is where you want to have advocates close by. And again, with my team, sitting down with my coach and then looking at what we could learn. And this is something that I see people, they look at what they can learn when they're disappointed, but then you got to let it go
Mm-hmm.
and realize, okay, tomorrow's a new day. And learn from the, not so much mistakes, but learn from the experience, especially if it hasn't been a great one, what you can. Don't take it as a personal slight, but then let it go and move on with a new pathway, and figure out the steps. Okay, we've got to this point. Now, how do we get to that point? And so it's like that not only in sport but in relationships and business, where you don't want to get down with the previous experience. Learn from it and then figure out, okay, to course correct, that's where we want to head, and then away you go again. So yeah, you don't want to get demoralized. And I've seen, I swam with people way more talented than I did, but sometimes that was the case. They wouldn't perform as well as they wanted to. They'd get down and they just couldn't get out of it.
Hmm.
And so you want to learn from the experiences, but move on. Tomorrow's it's a new day and a new opportunity.
Well, I
So
think
that's
even
how I
then
look at it.
you said something in the article about recognize you're disappointed. A lot of people
Yeah,
feel like moving forward means moving on or moving over. Like I just could ignore the situation. But I
right.
imagine uh, you felt disappointed and you remembered what it felt to be
Yeah,
disappointed, and you did not want to do that again.
yeah, yeah,
And if you just kind of
yeah.
ignored the emotion, you may not have had the capability to push yourself forward or
That's right.
to really put that last effort in
Yeah,
at the end. I mean, you're backstroking, right?
yeah.
Which means you reach backwards
That's right.
and you can't see the wall, but
Yeah,
you're throwing your hands as hard as you can, almost
yeah.
hoping you break your fingers, right? You're just
That's right.
trying to
Yeah,
do that. And if who
yeah,
would want to go through that experience unless they
yeah,
perhaps remembered the disappointment, but
yeah,
also, like you said, analyze and moved on
yeah.
from it, or move
And
forward,
that's
move forward.
yeah, and that's a great point because you don't let the disappointment define you. You take out of it what you can, and then you move on. And that was the same from a larger perspective as an athlete. It's an interesting thing. A lot of people don't realize, but at the Olympic Games Village, particularly towards the end of the Olympics, there's a fair bit of depression. And because for some athletes, their career has defined them. Sadly, that's as far as they're concerned, this is who they are. One of the things when you look at people in retirement who are vibrant, they have stepped out of a job, but the job wasn't them. They were doing a great job, might have been for 5, 10, 30 years, but they were more than the job. And so to really enjoy and set up retirement for a far more enjoyable time, you're going to see those people who are maximizing it understand that the job that they were just transitioning out of, that's part of what they do and part of what they can do, but it's not them, and it's not the only thing that defines them.
Hmm.
And so one of the things you'll see with vibrant people in retirement, they'll have perspective. And they're the funnest people to talk with because they've learned so much. They usually communicate really well, and sadly they don't have enough people coming up to them and saying, how did you do this? I mean, Alicia and I, when we went back to New Zealand in 1990, we were newlyweds. So we would seek these people out in our church, like I mentioned, who'd been married at that stage for 40 years, for 50 years. And we'd say, hey, how? And this
Right.
is one of the things that people in retirement, there's so much opportunity for them to give. I just wish younger people would understand that and seek them out. I mean, we say we don't want to repeat the same mistakes. I'm all for not making a mistake if I can avoid it. And to do that, I want to talk with people who are seasoned, who have been there. And, people in retirement or work optional lifestyle people, they're the ones to be seeking out. So they got a huge role to play in our culture.
Yeah, I love how you're pointing out just the the level of capability of almost like the choice of your attitude
Yeah,
can make not just in the beginning of life, but when you're transitioning into retirement. And I think this, I'm getting more and more into the idea of interviewing and meeting athletes to talk about retirement because they've gone through it as 22-year-olds, as
right,
32-year-olds, and
right.
even though they're younger and they've got a different circumstance, they have a lot to offer to a 62-year-old to say, here's what I've gone through. And at the same time, the 62-year-olds, they've got a lot more life experience to offer to the young folks. So good for you for recognizing that, 30 some years ago, that, oh my
Yeah,
goodness, if I want to make this work, I better find out how to make it
yeah.
work.
How others have done it. That's right. And my parents, I was blessed to have my parents have a wonderful marriage, but it's always fun getting other input as well.
Right. Well, I've got
Yeah.
one more question for you, Paul.
Yeah.
Before that, tell us what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
You can email me at paul@paulkingsman.com. So paul@paulkingsman.com, and that'll come right through to me. And if you email me, and we can, if you want to talk or got any questions or want to give me some advice, feel free to email me there, and we can set up a time to talk or have a Zoom call.
Yeah, I think the ever-present learner is something that's been coming through, shining through, that you're always looking to learn.
Yeah.
So that's great.
Yeah.
Well, final question for you, Paul. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about, and remember that this podcast is rated clean.
That few people know about. Favorite food is definitely ice cream. For me though, favorite time just to totally relax is by the beach. My wife and I actually, we're heading to Savannah next week. I'm speaking for our company there, but then we're going to shoot over to Charleston and spend a couple of days there, and just be on the beach. She knows the beach for me is therapy. It's where I do all my best thinking. And so that for me is a very special place. A couple of others, I've had lunch with the Queen. Sat next to the Queen when I retired in 1990. She was a lovely lady. So yeah, just fantastic lady. Have done a jockey poster for jockey back in New Zealand. That was a long time ago, about 50 pounds ago, as
Oh
I
man,
tell people. So yeah, I've had a lot of fun experiences. I've had a blessed life, and was
that's
a
great.
jail chaplain for 15 years,
Excellent.
which is a very special time in my life.
I believe it. Well, I asked
Yeah.
for one thing, and you gave us so many. I just love it. I got a feeling when people email you, you will not be responding at the beach. You'll be enjoying your time there.
I will be, but it will be before 8:30, because now, as a 55-year-old, getting to bed at 8:30 is like, it's a successful day if that happens.
That's great. Awesome. Good. Well, thanks for coming on, Paul. You've been a big help for us to learn how to become distraction proof. Gave us some great tips and ideas on how to become distraction proof.
You're welcome, Jeremy. It's great sharing with you.
You got it. And thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions.